You're watching the debate edition of Frank Discussions. In this format, the hosts have assigned positions, one for and one against a topic, regardless of their personal views. The arguments you hear here are not necessarily their personal opinions, but are in keeping with the rules of the debate. The goal is to challenge ideas and spark critical thinking.
Hey there. Our moot topic today is Guyana should stick with the fiscal terms of the production sharing agreement with Exxon. I will be arguing for. Kemol, I think you have the advantage on this one because you submerge yourself in oil, but the good soldier I am, I'm going to press on. From the onset, I'm compelled to highlight what everyone knows. The PSA we have with Exxon and its partners is lopsided. Exxon knows that. I know that. You know that. Norton knows that. Jagdio and Ali know that. The camera guy, he knows that. So we can accept that. Now, I want to make the very important point that this is not church. Shout out to Dr. Kisun.
Kazoon?
Yes, Asha Kisun. You remember the this is not church thing? But I make that point to note that even outside of church, our word must be our bond. We have to have respect for agreements, sanctity of contract and all that jazz. The sanctity of contract point might sound run of the mill because we've been hearing about that since 2017 when calls for negotiations were first made. But it's really a big deal, not only because it speaks to integrity, but because it caters for stability. Guyana is marketing itself as open for business. And respect for agreements is a pillar of any solid business space. It signals to the international business community that your investment would not be, flimsy. No one wants
Stable.
right. No one wants to be in an environment where they will invest expecting X, and then they get K. K for
Kazoon.
K soon. But we need to create that environment where you feel that it's a go. Next, I think we must consider the fact that Exxon is unwilling to budge. And while the contract makes room for negotiation, you're well familiar with the stability clause that says that Exxon has to agree to negotiate before we can go ahead. And they are not going to agree. You and I attended an energy conference last year in Yohala, California. I know we can't speak about certain revelations made there, but suffice to say, Exxon is hell-bent on allowing its shareholders to benefit the way they anticipated that they would benefit from the Guyana agreement. If Guyana decides to push Exxon out, or if they're pushed out solely because of this call for renegotiation, we will be saddled with costs. And the costs will be calculated based on whatever Exxon has invested that they haven't been able to recuperate before that nullification of the agreement occurs. I think they invested so far, or they committed so far $55 billion.
Yes.
About that. So that's a hefty sum we can end up paying if we push for renegotiation. So where that leaves us? It leaves us with our 2% that we already have and the the share of profit oil based on the agreement. The money we have raked in so far from this lopsided agreement, which is 2% on our share of profit, it has allowed us to do so much. We just get cash grant and thing now. We everything increase. We We have undertaken massive infrastructure project, and we have money to invest in agricultural development to reclaim our throne as agri-king and be able to diversify the economy. We also save a little. There's a debate, I know, on how much we're saving, but that's not the one we're having right now. So are we willing to sacrifice what we're getting right now at the altar of entitlement? The argument might be, imagine how much more you can achieve if royalty was increased from the 2% to maybe a 5 or 10%. But again, Exxon is holding firm that they want to keep their shareholders happy. And if they leave, we do not know how long it will take to attract another IOC, International Oil Company, to come pick up the slack. So instead of thinking where we will be with 5 or 10% royalty, I want you to imagine where we will be without any, not being able to complete maintain our ambitious infrastructure projects, not being able to move to the stage where we can reduce poverty and eliminate unemployment, to address more social problems, remove beggars off the streets, that kind of run-of-the-mill, run-of-the-mill thing. So I want to stop there, but before, let's recap. My first point, we must respect agreements in order to have a stable environment and build trust. The second point, the contract can only be renegotiated if Exxon approves and is willing to go to the table. And the third, running around after looking for more can leave us with nothing. Kemol, you ever experience where that situation where the food tastes best when it's a small share? Like you might buy it from a Chinese steady, and the time you got to share with your two friends is when the Chinese food tastes the best. Growing up, whenever we had a small share and we have to divide between everybody in the house, mommy would say, eat little and live long. She used to only say that when we get enough, right? When there's a lot, you could eat how much you want. But let's take this point. Let's eat little and live long enough to display what we have learned. No more lopsided agreements. But let's make the best use of what we have now. What say you?
I say the food tastes best when it's a small share. Sounds like oil company propaganda. It sounds like, yeah, so this is where you get take it.
No.
You know?
Listen, don't mix me. Because remember Glenn Lal already said that I stole myself to the oil companies. So I just want to state it's not oil companies. It's just what my mommy tell me.
Okay, so my first serious argument here is, okay, I'll say before I go, I, in my personal capacity, respect the sanctity of contracts.
Good.
Basically, when it comes down to the sanctity of your word, what you say should be treated with sacredness.
So we agree.
We agree that contracts should be treated with sanctity, that Asha Kisoon did something dishonorable.
Good.
When she agreed to her political partners that I will demit this seat when my time ends, as we have agreed, and then she chose not to do it.
Good. And
Right?
you don't want to be no Asha soon.
Good. But you have said that the PSA is lopsided, and okay, we can agree on that.
Again, we agree.
But what we need to consider when we're having this conversation about sanctity of contracts is that it's important to not try to misplace the word sanctity when the circumstances that lead to the signing of the contract were not sanctified,
Okay.
right? So let's do a history lesson and we look back on the people that were involved in the signing of the contract. The Minister of Natural Resources at the time was Mr. Raffle Trotman. And so I'm going to talk about Raffle Trotman, but I'm going to say that it's not just him. He represents the entire infrastructure or power system that led to the signing of the contract.
Okay.
So President Granger and whoever else were involved.
He was the front man.
He was the front man. Raffle Trotman, as we have found out from revelations by the NGO Global Witness, a UK law firm called Clyde & Co. that he hired to investigate the circumstances that led to the signing, we learned a lot. What we learned, first of all, and most importantly, was that Raffle Trotman received advice multiple times that when he was going to, finalize these terms and ink this contract, that at the time ExxonMobil was analyzing the results of discovery it had made, right? And Trotman received advice that told him, if you wait a bit more until we get the results of that discovery from ExxonMobil, it would increase Guyana's negotiating position. It would strengthen Guyana's negotiating position. And he chose not to wait.
He was
And
excited.
you really have to ask yourself, if a minister of natural resources has the responsibility to advocate in Guyana's interests, and he received expert advice that said, you need to wait, and waiting would put us in a better position, and he chose not to wait, whose interests was he protecting, really? So, quite frankly, many people would hear that, and they have heard that and read it in the newspapers, and said that, these are very suspicious circumstances. Add to that, what we also found out was that Minister Raffle Trotman took a cabinet paper to President Granger et al., the ministers of government, so that they can approve the signing of this deal. And that cabinet paper, as we found out, was drafted by an official of ExxonMobil. So
I'll pretend to be shocked.
what kind of relationship did the government have with ExxonMobil at the time that an ExxonMobil official was found to have drafted a cabinet paper that's supposed to go to the government, an internal document? So that's what I mean when I say the circumstances leading up to this signing were not sanctified. They're suspicious at best, could be corrupt. We don't know, but they're extremely suspicious. So how could you come to me and say, respect the sanctity of contracts, when the circumstances are so suspicious and there has not been a sufficient opportunity to ventilate exactly what happened and have those people who are supposed to be representing Guyana's interests answer for what they did?
Okay.
So I respect the sanctity of contracts, but we need to have a nuanced discussion.
Right.
We need to respect the nuance of the situation. And with respect to the many projects that have been approved by the government of Guyana, there are projects that have already started production. So those terms are locked in with those projects. But for me, I'd say that any project moving forward that has to be approved, try to get better terms. And Abena, no one has ever actually said that they've tried. Has the Granger government tried? Has the Ali government tried? They just say when they're in government, we are not going to renegotiate it. But now the Granger administration has demitted office, and then we see people who were part of that government are now saying, let's renegotiate the contract. When you had the power to do it, you should have done it.
Maybe they couldn't have because of the sanctity of contract. And because if Exxon went through all of that, it being an international company expected to be held or certain practice, if they went through risking one of their own, creating the cabinet paper and sending it, you think I can go through all of the, as Guyanese would say, jiggery pokery, and still can allow you to alter the fiscal terms?
So you're calling it jiggery pokery, right? Not me. So how do you accept that the suspicious circumstances under which this contract was negotiated and signed are concerning?
As put forward by you, of course, I would think they are concerning. But if those are the representatives that the people chose at that time to negotiate their on their behalf, then that's what you have to live with.
That's what you have to live with respect to what? The projects that you have, the projects moving forward that are yet to be reviewed and approved?
Respect to the contract that governs the entire Stabroek block that Exxon operates. As you know, I don't think there's anything I can school you on oil in our context. As you know, there's already the new model PSA to govern other projects that are outside of the Stabroek block. But the representatives of the people that time agreed to those terms.
Yeah, they agreed to those terms. But when we say, oh my God, we have a new model PSA with better terms, yes, we do have a new model PSA. But right now, all of the commercial oil and gas that we found are in the Stabroek block. So what's the point right now of having a new model PSA when we can't apply it to any project? And, you talk about the stability of contracts, but the very stability clause, it creates, there's a provision for the contract itself to be renegotiated without running afoul of the contract if, as it says, all parties agree. So it takes me back to the point, have they actually tried? Can any of our government actually say, we have asked Exxon and its partners to come to the negotiation table to get a 1 or 2 more
I
percentage
think
points?
if you look at some of the changes to the contract that the PVP has been able to implement, flaring fees and some other fineries that are not coming to my head right now, you can see that there were attempts to alter different parts of the contract.
Yeah.
So I'm sure if they tried to do it in those ways, it must have been some attempt made to move into the fiscal terms.
You can't say that. You can't say that because you don't know.
So we don't know, just like you don't know the circumstances that led to the signing of the contract, but we can examine the evidence that are before us and arrive at a reasonable conclusion. And the PPP has so far been able to implement several changes to the contract. Exxon said they're not going to renegotiate, but we see basically a renegotiation. It's just that it didn't apply to the fiscal terms.
Okay, I'm glad you brought up the flaring fee. Because the flaring fee is a
Smiley.
financial burden, right? The stability clause says Guyana cannot subject these companies to a financial burden beyond what is already provided for in the terms of the contract, right?
Yes.
But the flaring fee is a financial burden that the government of Guyana has decided to impose on ExxonMobil.
I like where this is going.
Granted, the financial burden is nothing compared to, a better deal, whatever that better deal is. 55 billion according to Global Witness. So clearly, ExxonMobil is open to accepting a financial burden without claiming that it runs afoul of the contract. It's just that we need to determine the scale of the financial burden that ExxonMobil is willing to accept.
So then you're making my point. So attempts have been made, but
No, I'm saying attempts have been made with respect to the flaring fee. But now we can see that if the financial burden of the flaring fee can be imposed without issue, without running afoul of the contract.
I don't think it was imposed. It had to be a negotiation. Exxon had to agree that they're going to pay this.
So they negotiated,
Yeah,
and Exxon accepted the financial burden. So clearly, there is an extent, some degree of an additional financial burden ExxonMobil is willing to accept, and we need to determine where that line is drawn. What is the financial burden that can be imposed on ExxonMobil that they wouldn't come and say, we don't agree to that.
Kemol, I am very happy about the model our program has taken so that we can introduce arguments that are really not our own. So I want to make this point. People say all the time that politicians, their main goal is what they can get, the corruption.
Yeah.
So these politicians, as if I can put it a little bit more raw, they're like thief. People like say, So if I can get more to thief, why not? Therefore, if there was a way around getting Exxon to increase the royalty to a 10%, you don't think our politicians would have done that? For 2 reasons. One, it make them look good. they they kind of bully Exxon into doing this, and two, they get more to spend on the people and a little bit more to put in their pockets.
There are definitely competing interests in the decision of various governments to decide whether they're going to try to renegotiate the contract or not. So, for example, with the PPP, they've said that the reason that they don't want to renegotiate it is because they need to respect the sanctity of contracts because of the impact it would have on the overall investment climate. Because you don't want to seem like a country that's not welcoming of investors.
And we see other countries when they try to do that, when they try to force the hand of these oil companies, that they leave. And when they leave, you develop such a bad reputation that it's hard to attract someone else.
Okay, so let me clarify that my position was never that we should force a unilateral imposition of new terms, but that we should seek to renegotiate through the provision of the stability clause that allows for it with the consent of all the parties. I just think that what Guyana can do is get the most competent negotiators and decide on what is the best strategy to take moving forward and attempt to get better terms from ExxonMobil and its partners and see what happens. Then come back and tell the people what happened. Even if you failed, the people know that you tried. So Kaitor News and Glenn Lal can stop this years-long discussion and advocacy that everyone's tired of with respect to this renegotiation of the contract. Let them say, we tried.
I think if we renegotiate tomorrow and we get 10%, Kaitor News might come and say we need 15%. So that shouldn't necessarily be the weight of your argument. But what say you if we do try this, and let's for the sake of the argument that they have tried and Exxon is firm, no, we want our 2% royalty. And what's next? I'm not going to move.
What's next is we agree, and well, we need to agree now that 6 projects have been approved with these current terms, and time was of the essence. And with respect to what has already been approved and the production that has already gone, we've lost out. And we can't go back, we can't change time. More than 600 million barrels of oil have been produced already from offshore Guyana, locked into those terms. We can't get that back. So what the Guyanese people need to do is take stock of what has been lost and make sure you don't lose it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it?
That's it. My position is really that there are 2 more projects that ExxonMobil wants to pursue. Let's try and see what happens.
Okay. So the mood before us was Guyana should stick to the fiscal terms of the PSA. I've made the case in support. Kemol was against. Being that the aim is to stimulate frank discussions grounded in reasoning, we're not going to say who won the debate. We just wanted to bring the arguments to the table. Now it's your turn. Please weigh in the comments. Oh, I had to do this there.